Well, I know that I had told Trav that once we sold that E90 M3, we were gonna get a 911. This is not a 911. And Trav knows that I overpromise and underdeliver. So what we have here is an E36 318i that we're gonna do a quick flip on. What's a quick flip, you may ask? Well, it's a car that you don't have to do minimal work to, and we can easily sell it for a $1. So I hopped on the internet and I found this car. Now this car had some people problems. The girl that had it, she was moving in a couple of days, and so I thought we could make a couple grand just by cleaning it up and doing a couple of small things to it, and ultimately have the down payment for the car that we actually want to do. So I met Mackenzie at a park, and the first thing that I noticed was this car had kissed a couple other cars once or twice. And the other thing that I noticed that didn't really bother me because Trav gets to work on it is that there was a battery tender in this trunk. Why would you need a battery tender? And lastly, this guy was missing, but overall, it looked like it just needed a little TLC and we could make a little bit of money on it. So I went ahead and bought it.
I can do $2 grand cash. That's my final offer. If you need to leave tomorrow, it will be in good hands.
I do, I'm leaving town tomorrow, so.
Okay, it's going to a good place.
There's only a couple things wrong with it.
It's a 318.
It is a 318, but that's what the beauty of it is that it's cheap.
It's a 318 automatic.
But
Brad, what are we gonna do with this thing?
It's a quick flip. We gotta get rid of it as quickly as possible, and there's a couple things that I can't tackle, so I'm gonna need your help. Battery drain. The cluster, for whatever reason, the odometer isn't showing right. I think it's low miles, but I don't know. I think it's low miles though, and it looks like it's low miles. Look how straight this thing is.
So according to Brad, this little 318 needs some help. Let's take a look at this parasitic draw.
Diagnosing a car that has a recurring flat battery problem can oftentimes prove difficult. However, with a few specialty tools, a basic understanding of electricity, and a bit of patience, finding the problem is far from impossible.
So when Brad bought this thing, he noticed there was a battery tender installed. So what we're gonna do now is try and verify if this car actually has a parasitic draw problem or not. It could just be a bad battery. Brad mentioned the girl we bought it from travels a ton, so it's possible the car used to just sit for weeks at a time and the battery would just discharge naturally.
We had already verified the charging system was functioning properly, and as for the battery, it's not even a year old. Batteries can be defective right out of the box, but my suspicions pointed us in the direction of a parasitic drain.
So there are two basic ways to check for an amperage draw. The first way, the most common way, is to hook your voltmeter up in series with the battery, with it set to amps, so that you can actually measure the amount of amperage passing through the meter. The second way, and my preferred method, is with an inductive amp clamp. Now, you can get these for around $100, and I strongly recommend it.
Most inductive amp clamps are fairly straightforward to use. Simply switch it on, zero the meter out near the battery, and clip it onto a battery cable.
Now generally anything over 60 milliamps is too high. Our car is drawing 136 milliamps, so we do have a slight draw.
The old method of narrowing down and eliminating a draw problem used to be to remove fuses one by one until the amperage draw drops off to a reasonable level, then chase down the culprit from there. Virtually all cars made within the last 20 years, however, have a network of computers that you can wake up by pulling fuses, creating a false amperage draw reading.
With modern cars, the best way to diagnose a parasitic draw... What are you wearing?
Dude, what?
So as I was saying, the best way to diagnose a parasitic draw on a modern car is to do a voltage drop test across the fuses. You voltage drop test each fuse until you find one that's drawing power, and you trace it from there. Got it? 0, 0. Got it.
Awesome. Why is it such a high number?
Because that is the circuit that's drawing power.
MV?
It's millivolts.
Millivolts. Ooh.
So simply all we need to do now is figure out which fuse that is. And that'll help us understand what it's drawing. Cigarette lighter.
Oh, I'm using that right now.
So quick tip, when diagnosing a parasitic draw, if you've got a friend like Brad, make sure simple things are switched off. Headlights, nothing's in the cigarette lighter, glove box light's not stuck on. Anything that consumes power, that shouldn't be.
And so the reason that we have the cigarette lighter going right now is because I got this uber cool charger for our drone.
Did you?
Yeah, but it probably is pulling a bunch of MVs or whatever, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's probably our draw.
But what I realized though is that with BMWs, the lighter stays hot even if the car is off. Is that the only thing that could be draining?
Well, we have to eliminate that first.
Okay.
So let's get it unplugged and we'll recheck.
Perfect.
Now that is super awesome, but get it unplugged and let's see if we actually have a draw problem.
Okay.
So the ampere draw on our car now is down to 0.34 milliamps. Spec on most cars is going to be anything under 60. So I'd say we're good.
Hey Brad, the drone's charged. The odometer isn't reading correctly, so we're gonna need to take the instrument cluster out and either send it out or fix it ourselves. Also, he did mention this steering wheel is, well, it's kind of a bit loose up here. So we're gonna kill two birds with one stone. Take the wheel off, get the cluster out. Step 1 to removing the steering wheel on an E36. You gotta get it turned one way to get the T30 fastener that's there, and then the other way to get the fastener that's here. Once you get those fasteners loose, the airbag is going to come out. So I highly recommend disconnecting the battery first.
Using a T30 Torx bit and a small ratchet, remove the two bolts on the back of the steering wheel that hold the airbag assembly in.
So be very careful with these little connectors as they can be fragile. Whenever you have an airbag, you're dealing with an airbag, make sure you always set it down facing up. The reason for that is if should this thing decide to blow up, it'll just turn into a big balloon, it'll scare the crap out of you, but everything will be fine. If you were to set it down this way and it blows up, you've now turned this into a projectile.
Next, remove the 16mm bolt for the steering wheel. Take note of and mark the position of the wheel's orientation on the splines, and slide the wheel off. You'll need to unplug the steering wheel from the wiring harness in the steering column. Removing the lower trim piece will make this a ton easier.
So now with the steering wheel out of the way, simply remove these two T27 fasteners that hold the top of the cluster in.
With the fasteners out, use a plastic trim tool to help dislodge the cluster from the dashboard. Now unfortunately, our car doesn't have an adjustable steering column, so to facilitate removing the instrument cluster, we opted to take the upper trim piece off as well.
Okay, so now that the steering wheel's off and the cluster is out, I think this would be a good time to go ahead and knock this oil change out really quick.
You know what, man? You can't have all the fun today. Why don't you go check out and see if that cluster can be fixed or if we should ship it out, and I'll take care of the oil change.
You sure?
Might as well try.
Now they do sell soldering kits with boards to fix these digital displays. But because this cluster apparently has such low miles on it, I think we're just going to ship it to the professionals.
Dude, look at what just showed up, man. We got the cluster, and I sourced the steering wheel. There we go.
Is this one sloppy like our old one was?
Feel it, man. It's right here. And look at this. Brand new cluster.
Hopefully they were able to fix it, huh?
It looks good, huh?
Alright, well, let's get it in the car, dude. This thing's gotta go.
Yeah, it's gotta be shipped.
Do it.
Reinstalling a repaired cluster is a snap and requires no coding or programming for the immobilizer or the odometer. Simply plug it in and put everything back where it belongs. Make sure to plug everything in and get both electrical connectors back in their holders to avoid damage to the wiring harness. Line up the steering wheel and bolt it back down. Get the airbag and the horn contact plugged back in, and make sure to get both bolts for the airbag tight.
So now that our steering wheel's back on and the airbag's back in, the safest way to check your work is to switch the ignition on, then reconnect the battery. That way, if there is a problem with the airbag, if something were to happen and it were to go off, you're not sitting in harm's way. So the instrument cluster looks great, and this new steering wheel we installed feels just like it did when it left the factory.
So the oil's been changed, the cluster and the steering wheel have been sorted. It's time to get this car washed up and ready to sell.
All right, Trav, this car is looking amazing after all the wax you put on it, but man, it's missing one thing. You know what that is? A BMW emblem.
For the wheel.
Yeah, baby.
So, with a little time, attention, and a bit of polishing, our 318 was finally ready.
Wow, we got all the good angles on that car, that's for sure, you know? And that is what makes this car such an approachable first-time enthusiast car for somebody that wants to get into a German engineered little sports car, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a really cool car. If you needed an economy car that's super reliable and relatively safe, but not super boring, I mean, it's kind of hard to shy away from an E36, any E36.
Totally. And it's a good stepping stone for like a guy to get an E36 or E46 M3.
Yeah, totally.
I'm glad it touched both of our hearts, you know, and it tugs at my heartstrings because my first car, if you remember, man, was that 318 IS, and I wrapped it around a tree, but like, dude, and that's what we used. The deck lid is
Hey, it saved your life, you know?
It did, and they're so well built, and they get good gas mileage, and they're momentum cars, and they're great to learn how to properly drive a little sports car.
So for less than $5,000, this car is a great enthusiast car.
$2,000 is what we got that car for, baby.
And like we already said, they're relatively cheap, they're super reliable, and it's great on gas mileage.
It is 35 miles a gallon. We need to find someone to buy this thing, dude.
Yeah, well,
search is on. Let's do it. And in less than 48 hours, our dream got a little closer to becoming reality. The last thing is you have the money, and I have the key, so
Perfect.
let's do it.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Hey, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, enjoy the car.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm gonna miss this one, dude.
You're gonna miss the 318.
Yeah. It's so cute. Well, listen to that thing roar. Well, hopefully the next time we don't have to do a BMW, huh? You know what this is? Down payment on a 911, baby. Let's do it.
Bud, let's do it.
Aw, yeah.